One of the most valuable and precious things is quick deploy time, so that if you merge to main, you can get the results right away, some 2 or 3 minutes later on your production. I used to use all sorts of really wild deployment methods, such as SSHing into the droplet or VPS or whatever instance you have, git pulling the latest changes, building them, installing them, and then deploying them, and so on and so forth. And then because my droplet wasn't big enough, I even built them locally and then copy pasted. So with SCP, I copy pasted them over to the droplet, and this worked well. But this is so annoying, manual and cumbersome. And because I only deployed every so often, I would always forget, and it was so much friction and pain, and hotfixes were so painful, especially if I had to make like 7 changes or something, like a small change here, then it breaks in production because I didn't consider this, the URL was wrong or something, the environment variable was missing, something. I mean, you wouldn't really, commit the environment variable, but maybe you get the idea of it. So finally, I wanted to be saved by the automatic deployment, and for this I tried to go really simple. I think there are some more complex solutions. I just try to go with a GitHub action that somehow links up with my droplet and checks out my repository, installs everything, and then uses PM2 to serve it. And this worked surprisingly well. Or did it? No, actually it was really a nightmare and difficult to work with. Well, a nightmare might be a bit exaggerated, but I spent the better half of a day trying to figure this out. And I'm gonna explain you how it went. I ask you, does this look like fun to you? Look at this. It just failed deployment after deployment. Some of them worked, but they were sort of fake working, because after I got it working, after some hours of trying, it didn't actually get the latest changes from my repository. And actually it did get those, but I am a noob to GitHub Actions. I don't really know what they do or how they work, so I had to figure out the logic behind it. So in this first section, this is just some boilerplate to determine when this happens, whenever I push to main or I do a pull request. However, the interesting part happens here, jobs. So I used self-hosted. This is some work runner by GitHub that you can self-host on your droplet, and I'm not really super sure what it is, but it's like a listener for the hook of, so you push to your repository, how does your droplet know, and how can the action push to your, like willy-nilly push to your droplet, how can it? So in this sense, the GitHub the self-hosted work runner seems to be a listener that then does all the work for you on your droplet. And yeah, that I'm not super familiar with, but anyways, I installed it and it was working. I could manually execute it and it worked. The first naive version of this all worked. One problem I was running into is that once you start a node server, you want it to be in the background, because otherwise the job can't finish. It just gets hung up on this node serving. So it's like really bad practice also. And PM2 for now was the way to do this. In another context, later on, I tried to desperately use the ampersand technique. You can do this. I can show you really quickly. So instead of saying pm start test API, you can say run node index.js. I mean, in this case, it would be on dist, and then this will just indefinitely run. But you can do this here, and then it will be hidden. But then once the action is completed, it will kill all the child processes. So it will just kill your server when it ends, which is not what you want. So you can, forgive me, I don't know exactly there's an environment variable that is the process child ID or something. You can set it to an empty string, and so some set env equals empty string. And then you do a double ampersand, and then this will work. And I was so happy, which is why you see some of these green check marks. However, the next time you deploy, it can't do it because the port is already occupied. Also, it seems like kind of bad practice to me. I just wanted to see if I can get it to work. Why not do it with this PM, you asked? Well, the first reason is that PM2 doesn't know this name, test API. You have to do something like this, where you say PM2 start, and then you pass it a string. This is what I saw in the documentation, or let's say tutorials. We say node, dist index.js, and then you give it the name of foobar, or maybe without these. So you give it the name. And weirdly enough, this really didn't work for me. It just completely broke down and gave me lots of error messages. So I had to not ever have things in string. So this actually works in this case, but so I'm getting to the next thing here. A really big problem was the environment variable. So I had the need to do something like port. I mean, it's in uppercase, but I don't like this keyboard I'm working on right now. A13 I'm using, and then this works when you do it, when you execute it on the terminal. But sadly, it doesn't work with PM2. It just completely goes bonkers and goes crazy, and it tries to, it thinks it's like a file path or something. So that didn't work. It also didn't work at the end of the string. It just, I couldn't really pass the PM2 any environment things. There's a pm.config, but I didn't want to mess with this for now. I already actually messed with it, but it was like not really working either. So I just needed to have this more simple and without the string, because the string was killing it, and having it raw like this worked. But basically I had to prepare this. I had to run this before initially before the job ever runs, so that the job can actually find this. And then this silly stuff here is just because I plan to delete all of these. This is the old API, and oh, actually I see a mistake here, but never mind, because I just renamed this. And now I see that's not renamed in this job, but PM2 takes enough server resources that this command here does unfortunately not work on my joblet, because it doesn't have enough memory. And so I have to stop everything, and therefore it has also to know all the names and so on and so forth. So after I got it working, it didn't work ultimately, because when I pushed the change was not reflected in the update. And then I learned, because I looked more into how this whole thing works, remember I just wanted to naively deploy things to the server, I learned that this actions checkout creates or at least the GitHub work runner creates its own little folder with its own little universe, which you can see here. And basically I was working before, I manually, pulled it, Git cloned it, and I expected it naively to simply work and update this. And I also added the .env here, because it's Git ignored, it will just naively hoping it would work. But I realized that this action runner here, instead in this work folder, clones this, or has this, and then here's where all the action is. And after I realized this, I could debug it. But I also realized this meant that I couldn't really create anything here, because this gets this gets renewed. I don't know actually if I manually, now that I think about it after some hours, if I create a .env here manually, there is one here, but it's .env, so it's not being shown in this file viewer, then maybe I don't have to go through the pain that I went through today, because there is no .env and there's no way to really communicate this. Like, this has no way of knowing the .env, and I do want to use .env. I really don't this is supposed to be a nice fancy setup. I don't want to use any crazy hacks. So I had to resort to manually creating this .env. And I also found on Stack Overflow that this is the common prevailing wisdom of how to do it. You just manually create a touch.env, and then this is apparently how you insert stuff, and this is like a debugging thing. I'll remove it later. And this worked, almost. I mean, it worked fully, but then I also had some weird other problem. I tested different things, and somehow there was a .env in the root repository, and in this repository, but before I had a situation where it would not read, it would only read from this repository. So the index.js the port would be undefined, even though it was defined here. And then after I created a file here, it would suddenly read it. So, but I think this was this was all the way in this other directory here. I don't really remember. I just vaguely knew that maybe this wouldn't work. So I didn't have the full, hands-on knowledge on how the .env hierarchy works. So there was a hidden .env in this repository here, which overrode this one that I had here, which so it wouldn't work. But so I tried to do this and it wouldn't work, and I was really debugging this for ages, and then finally I found the one here and deleted it, and I actually used the number that was in here, and then it worked. But even getting the port number into this GitHub workflow was crazy difficult, because you have so first you have to go through these shenanigans, but then also there are variables and secrets, and secrets works, but variables, which you can set in a tab in GitHub, very similar to this. Here you can see it. I can set this port here, but somehow this is fully not available here when I do this. it is only available, it's just not available. And also if I do .env, this seemingly only refers to, you can declare env here, like I forgot how exactly to do, but like something like this, and then you like can say foo bar, you know, and then it's available down below as actually something like foo. But or does this even work? I don't know. But this obviously is ridiculous because I don't want them to be I don't want the environment variables to be hard coded in the YAML or the work file, the workflow. So I had to use the secrets, even though the port is very much not secret, and it's working. So I have to improve this, and I also want to improve the fact that right now it's like line by line, the .env, and it's very tedious, but I already saw there's a way to upload the whole entire .env into GitHub, basically one key and then transfer it. But oh well. So yeah, this was a super painful process. I still am not sure what the setup node does, but oh well, maybe it installs node. I don't know. It doesn't make, because there's already node installed. I'm happy that this is working. I was really stoked about it. And yeah, let me know in the comments if you know how the variables from this page here, can be fed into here, because I researched this for a bit and I couldn't really find a definitive answer. So there you go. This is how I managed to create automatic deployments of my code, pushing it to main, using a GitHub action with a workflow file to push it to a work runner that then listens to it and executes all of the needed things, and gives me a nice little server that can listen to stuff, and it works flawlessly. So I'm quite happy with this. So yeah, there is how you do that. Also, subscribe to this channel so that I can reach my goals and spend some more money on nicer camera and other equipment and improve the workflow of these videos. Besides this, I hope you found this interesting and that you have a fantastic day. Bye.